I'm David Lombardo, and this is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room. This summer, the Justice Center for the Protection of People with Special Needs, the state agency responsible for monitoring the care of more than 1 million vulnerable New Yorkers, released a 5-year strategic plan that is supposed to serve as a roadmap to improve their work, including increasing transparency and strengthening the ties with their stakeholders. For more on the plan, including how it was crafted, its implementation, and potential effect, we're joined by the Justice Center's acting executive director, Maria Lisi-Murray, who's been at the helm for more than 2 years now. Welcome back to the show, Executive Director.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, I want to start with, the end and this idea of measuring success, because when we've spoken with yourself as well as some of your predecessors, we've talked about things like calls that the Justice Center has received, or cases closed, or people added to the staff exclusion list. So when you think about measuring success in the future, is it just about those deliverables, or are there other quantifiable metrics that you're trying to identify in the future to determine your success?
Yeah, and you raise a great point. We have looked at the metrics that you've just represented here today, and I think those are good metrics, and we're not turning away from those metrics, but we're building upon those metrics. We're looking in a very new and specific way toward prevention and utilizing our data, enhancing it, making sure our data is telling us a full and complete story in terms of what's going on to drive more intentional prevention efforts.
And when it comes to prevention, it seems like a challenge to say we were able to prevent X number of cases of abuse and neglect, because who knows what would have happened. So what do you do to highlight that work? I mean, you're going to have some sort of multiversal technology or precognition technology that existed in Minority Report here. What are we talking about?
That would be great if that were available. But what we've done is over the last 13 years that the Justice Center has been in existence is we've been looking at data at a very high level, and we've been working with prevention at a very high level. We're now taking a much deeper dive into our data, enhancing it, and trying to identify key areas where we could even drill down to a provider level and try to predict where improved toolkits, improved resources, improved training might be more helpful to circumvent any potential negative outcome. We find that the prevention and toolkit resources that we create currently, they're being used, they're being downloaded, and we've heard through one-on-one discussions with providers that they're very useful and they appreciate it because it supports their training, it supports the dissemination of best practices. So that's what we're looking to do here.
Sticking with prevention, your first goal is to try to figure out new and innovative ways to prevent abuse and neglect from happening. So how do you go about spurring innovation in this type of work?
Yeah, I love this question. So again, we're looking at our data. We have a data team that's been charged with looking at our dashboards, and that includes our internal dashboards, and also figuring out what is it that providers or other state agencies may need from us with respect to data. So we're having these conversations to try to figure out what story does the data tell us, and what additional data points do we need in order to, complete our complete the story and our full understanding to drive actual data-driven prevention efforts. So while we don't have this, type of technology you've referenced, we do utilize dashboards. We have dashboards in Tableau. And we're utilizing what we have at hand currently to really sort of take the first step at this first point in our strategic plan to set out sort of our current state more accurately and identify the enhancements that we need, and then move forward in terms of determining what we may want or need for additional technology to support the vision.
So I guess it's one thing, though, to look for new and innovative ideas for addressing prevention, but then there are those, I think, widely recognized ways of preventing abuse and neglect, and one is a well-trained, well-paid, and motivated workforce. So what, if anything, can the Justice Center do to ensure that people who are working with OPWDD, OMH, and all the other O agencies have that workforce that is often a key to success.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. You need a well-trained, well-supported workforce, and that is a key part of what we're doing in our prevention collaborative. As we move forward, we're identifying new opportunities for toolkits, creating best practices documents, training documents. We have teams that will go on site and help to train providers if they think they need some additional training and support. So that really is key in terms of our strategic plan to making sure that support is in place. I mean, the Justice Center doesn't have a part in terms of the hiring, but what we can do to support the workforce is make sure that training is adequate, easily accessible. If there are issues or concerns, it's easily disseminated to the workforce to retrain. And I think that's where the Justice Center is making a real difference.
That limitation, though, the fact that you are not responsible for the budget lines of these agencies, is something we've heard from the Justice Center in the past. And I think it plays into the fact that if you do a word search for the word workforce in the strategic plan, I think it only comes up once. Is there, though, a case to be made that you guys could be advocating the governor, you guys could be lobbying for additional resources for these agencies? And maybe you'll tell me that's something you already do to some extent.
Well, with respect to the workforce, specifically in the hiring, again, we really don't have control or a say in that regard. What we focus on is making sure that the workforce as it comes in feels supported, understands what best practices and what their expectations are in the workforce, and making them feel supported so that they feel comfortable and that they can do their jobs in the best way that they can. I mean, these are difficult jobs. These folks work, very hard, and these can be challenging, but making sure that they have what they need to feel supported and properly trained, I think, is really the key point of what the Justice Center can do.
Well, before we move on, let me reintroduce you. For listeners just joining us, this is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and I'm speaking with Maria Lisi-Murray, the Executive Director of the Justice Center for the Protection of People with Special Needs, which recently came out with its 5-year strategic plan. Well, I want to come back to your experience at the Justice Center, and from those 2 years or working on this plan, have you seen areas for improvement at the Justice Center that you are looking to address as part of this roadmap?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to go back a year because one of the things I've been looking at since stepping into this role is really trying to refine our internal processes. And that's, that's the third goal in our strategic plan. Again, this aligns very well with Governor Hochul's Express New York and Executive Order 61 mandates, where she is challenging agencies to work better for New Yorkers. One of the things that we have improved already through looking at our internal process improvement is we've closed 1,600 more cases in the last year than we did the year before. So we're looking to make small improvements, that can make extremely big changes in terms of efficiency without sacrificing quality.
The closing of cases, is that an issue that stems from the long investigatory times? And if that is the issue that you guys have been able to address, how do you speed those up while not sacrificing quality?
Sure, great question. So yes, we have investigative times that can vary widely. If there is a serious, significant criminal event, sexual abuse type of case, oftentimes law enforcement or district attorneys are involved, and those can take much longer. And, we work collaboratively with our district attorneys and our law enforcement to ensure that they have the best chance of prosecuting these cases on the criminal side. To the extent that we have our cases and we can utilize, video evidence or remote investigative techniques, that's what we're doing in order to move our processes along in a, faster, more efficient manner, but without concerns to reduction in quality.
When you think about the investigatory work that your agency does, do you feel like there's enough safeguards in place if there are any questions raised about the investigators or who's overseeing investigations, especially if there's new information that comes to light about their history as investigators, maybe even before they join the Justice Center? And if you do feel confident about the safeguards that are in place, can you talk about what's there right now that makes you feel confident?
Absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this because this is, process to the Justice Center that people may not know. So an investigation begins. Our investigators do their part. The vast majority of our interrogations, our questioning of subjects or of witnesses, the vast majority are recorded and videotaped. So we do have access to those as an investigation moves along through the process. And we have, sort of the first stop after an investigation is the team of attorneys who do a complete case review. They review all of the evidence and the videos, and they make sure that we have reached our preponderance, of evidence that's the standard that we need to meet to be successful. And they look at the case in its entirety. So you have an independent team of lawyers who look at the case and make a determination as to whether a subject could or should be substantiated based on an allegation. If that individual decides to appeal, it goes to another team of separate attorneys, and they do an entire fresh look review. So we have two stops now where we have independent teams of attorneys looking at the evidence, looking at the videos to determine whether it is appropriate for this matter to go forward to a hearing. And if the subject wishes, they can then request an administrative hearing, and then you have a whole new process where you have a team of attorneys and an administrative law judge looking at the evidence to ensure that the preponderance is met and that if somebody is substantiated, that, it's done so in an appropriate manner. So we have a lot of controls in place. I'm a former Special Investigations Unit investigator, spent time in law enforcement, trial attorney, and I have a really strong background in controls and quality. So for me, our process is it's solid, and I have confidence in it.
And after a quick break, we'll continue our conversation with Maria Lisi-Murray, Acting Executive Director of the Justice Center for the Protection of People with Special Needs, the agency responsible for monitoring the care for more than 1 million vulnerable New Yorkers, which put out a new 5-year strategic plan this summer. Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell & Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com. I'm David Lombardo, and this is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room. We're continuing our conversation with Maria Lisi-Murray, Acting Executive Director for the Justice Center for the Protection of People with Special Needs, the state agency responsible for monitoring the care of more than 1 million vulnerable New Yorkers, including people with developmental disabilities or mental health conditions. They released a new 5-year strategic plan this summer that is supposed to serve as a roadmap to improve their work, including increasing transparency and strengthening ties with their stakeholders. In thinking about the future of the Justice Center, do you feel like you need additional statutory authority? Are there any tweaks to the underlying laws that you operate that might be needed in the future?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So we're always thinking about how or what can we do within the confines of the statute as it is now. Always open to have conversations if there's interest in changing our statutory authority, interest in expanding what it is that we do. We are a very unique agency, not only in state government, but we are a nation-leading agency. There's no other agency just like us in this country. So happy to share our expertise, happy to provide support if needed.
An element of your second goal is to learn from those who engage with the Justice Center. And that leads me to how the plan was crafted, because you may or may not know there are some people on your advisory board who feel like they were left out of providing any sort of substantive feedback. So how was this plan crafted?
So as you're aware, we meet with our advisory council on a regular basis. And our members are a really critical piece in advising how the agency moves forward. There were numerous discussions about the strategic plan, what the high-level goals would be. So we did report that out, quite frequently. Everyone in our advisory council comes from a different perspective, and that's what makes them so valuable. We have parents, we have self-advocates, we have people who are, representatives of the provider industries, and their input and their expertise really is critical to how the Justice Center is operating and moving forward in its strategic plan. And let me also clarify, so we have these 3 high-level goals that we're talking about. The how we get there is agile. Like, there can be a lot of changes in 5 years, right? So the how we get there and the steps we use to get there will be revisited regularly. We will absolutely continue to get input from our advisory council in terms of how we're moving forward, in order to get to these 3 high-level goals that we've identified.
The advisory board includes representatives from the so-called boards of visitors, who are often loved ones of people living in institutional settings. These can be the kind of first line of defense for identifying abuse and neglect because of the quality of life things that they might identify. There's been some reporting here and in New York Focus about those boards not necessarily having enough people to adequately do their work. So when you think about the boards of visitors, are they part of the success of the Justice Center, or do you view them as a separate oversight agency, and you don't feel like you need to incorporate them into your long-term plan? I mean, how do you think about these groups?
So again, this is a really great opportunity to talk a little bit about how we're revisiting how we work with the Board of Visitors. I think that there's opportunity for improvement within the Justice Center in that respect. So I think there's a lot more to come there.
Can you tease that out a little bit more?
Well, we're definitely looking at the representation and making sure it's really important to me that everyone has a chance to be heard, or has an opportunity to voice what they see as challenges that they're experiencing with interfacing with the Justice Center. I spent my first 2 years really on the road. I visited multiple providers, spoke at multiple large provider groups. I've tried to meet with as many people as I can in order to really get feedback and perspective in terms of where the Justice Center could be doing better. So, I really see part of my role here is looking at the agency from the lens of continuous improvement. And I would just say we are absolutely looking at this. This is an issue that's front of mind with us right now, and I would always happy to hear what people have to say and where we can be doing things better for New Yorkers.
Well, before we move on, let me reintroduce you. For listeners just joining us, I'm David Lombardo, and this is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're speaking with Maria Lisi-Murray, Acting Executive Director at the Justice Center for the Protection of People with Special Needs, the state agency responsible for monitoring the care of more than 1 million vulnerable New Yorkers. Well, what about those New Yorkers who are behind bars? You have this role in monitoring the care of people in solitary confinement as part of the so-called HALT Act law passed 4 or 5 years ago now. There has been some concerns about that role, in part because you guys seem to be identifying problems with the implementation of HALT, and then the Department of Corrections doesn't really do anything about it. So how do you view this role moving forward? Is it just steady as she goes, or do you have to make some sort of changes to this oversight role?
I really appreciate this question because this is another area we've sort of taken a step back and are looking at in terms of how we're producing the report. What does the data look like? We have combined forces with our data folks and our forensic folks to look at what does the data look like? How are we looking at the structure of the report? I mean, things as simple as that, to make sure when we're telling the story, it's sort of a whole and complete story. I think there's improvements to be made by the Justice Center in terms of how we report out on HALT, but if you look at our website, you can see each individual report when we go to visit. So there's that level of transparency also.
And are you getting the access to the prisons that you need? Because that was another issue in the wake of the prison strike.
Sure. Yes, currently we have access in the way that we need. Understand, too, that our HALT reporting, being on site in the prison really is just one component. We do a lot of document review. We do a lot of, comparison in terms of numbers and reporting. So we took the time, to really look at what we had, and it spurred, again, being able to take a step back and look at the data and sort of rethink how we're reporting out on HALT has been something we've been working very hard on, and I think people are going to appreciate even the structure of the new HALT reports when they come out.
Is that an area where we started our conversation talking about measuring success. Is that an area where you might try to redefine success in terms of getting some sort of changes in the behaviors of prison officials?
Yeah, I mean, our responsibility under Hall is to identify where there are recommendations to be made. And we are making those recommendations in our reports. And again, you can see them every time we complete the individual report, it goes up on our website. But I think the Justice Center has opportunity here to identify better how we are reporting out on the story and what it is that we are seeing from our, sort of high level.
And coming back to that idea of engagement, if there are people listening to this right now, maybe they have a loved one in the care of the state, maybe they're someone on the direct care front lines, how would you encourage them to make their voices heard as you guys do these annual updates and try to figure out how to actually implement this roadmap?
Yeah, absolutely. And we would encourage people to reach out. We have an individual family and support unit at the agency that is extremely active in terms of advocating and working with persons receiving services and their families. So if the individual happens to fall in that group, they're always a fantastic resource. They can always call us directly. They can send us an email. I try to be very accessible, and again, I'm out on the road and have several other events planned, speaking engagements and listening sessions with different provider groups over the fall. So we'll be out and about. People really should reach out and let us know, and because one of the key pieces of this strategic plan, again, is making sure that our agency is responsive to the stakeholders, making sure our agency is working for the people it's there to serve. Again, supporting Governor Hochul's initiatives to make sure that New York agencies work better for New Yorkers. That really is a key piece of Goal 3 in our strategic plan.
And what about, finally, the flow of information out of the Justice Center? There's references to transparency in the goals. Have you guys thought about how you engage the public, not just when you've got good news to talk about, like a strategic plan or the end-of-year successes, but when there are things that maybe you're uncomfortable dealing with? Is that something that you guys are examining at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Transparency is a key objective in the strategic plan. And again, that's really, being driven by the data and the enhancement of the data and identifying where there are trends or things that we should be addressing as an agency to drive prevention. So I would argue those are, not good news stories. If you're identifying negative trends and you need to put information out to help prevent against negative trends, I think we are trying to be transparent in that regard. But I am a big fan of transparency, and it is a critical part of our strategic plan.
Well, we've been speaking with Maria Lisi-Murray. She's the Executive Director of the Justice Center for the Protection of People with Special Needs. Maria, thank you so much for making the time, and good luck implementing the plan.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time with you. Thank you.
And for more on the history of the Justice Center, check out the 3-part series we recorded as part of the 10th anniversary of the agency, which you can find at capitolpressroom.org under the Justice for All tag.
Support for the Capitol Press Room is provided by New York State United Teachers, a statewide union of nearly 700,000 professionals in education and healthcare.